1644. The third year of the English Civil War was heralded by a fierce northern wind, a living wind of Covenanter Scots sweeping down into England on Parliament's side. Alexander Leslie was at their head. This obviously caused some alarm for thank you, that's quite enough with the wind effect for now. This obviously caused some alarm for the northern division of the Royalist army. Their force was immediately split in two. Half was set to watch over Lord Thomas Fairfax, who they had effectively bottled up in Hull. The other half went to confront Leslie and his northern wind, meeting with more failure than success. In no time at all, Newark and York were under serious threat. Both cities were surrounded by an amalgamate army of Roundheads and their new Scottish allies, and hopes of escape looked pretty slim. But never fear, Charles still had his Rupert. The king had only to give the word, and the wild prince went rushing up north to play the hero. The saving of Newark was actually one of his greatest accomplishments in the whole war. He pulled it off with perfect dash. Within a month, he was galloping off to the next project, York. This one would turn out to be a bit trickier proposition. Meanwhile, back in Oxford, Charles was regretting a lot of things. Over the past few months, he had got overbold and spread his forces thin over the country. Way too thin. Hey, is that Marmalade? That's good stuff, man. Although, honestly, jelly is better. Not peanut butter, though, just jelly. Oh, but you know what's really good? Is that cream cheese spread that you put on bagels. I could really go for one of those right now. Yeah. But, we didn't come here to talk about bagels. The point is, Charles had spread his forces too thin. And now, old Robin and Sir William Waller had linked forces and were closing in on Oxford. There was no way that Oxford could withstand a long siege. The supplies had run far too low for that. The king had two options, and he needed to make a decision quick. He could try to wait things out in Oxford until Rupert and his other scattered troops could come and rescue him, however long that might take, or make a break for it. The first idea of being trapped and starving half to death was not very appealing. Charles decided to make his escape. He was going to have to move carefully. Already, old Robin and Waller had captured and secured almost all the bridges and fords spanning the rivers Cherwell and Thames in the area, and there were enemy troops practically everywhere. The net was nearly closed. But where might fails, cunning may triumph. Charles made what is called a feint, a fake attack. He left the city with a small amount of cavalry and pretended he was going to attack the Roundheads' position at Abington. Naturally, many of the Roundheads rallied to this point to meet the king, and as soon as they did, he veered off and galloped west to Worcester. The hunt was on. Old Robin and Waller were onto the game now, and they were soon hot on the heels of the runaway king. Perhaps they would have caught him, but their own pride was about to prove their worst stumbling block. You see, old Robin and Waller didn't really like each other. They didn't get along well at all. They started arguing over what should be done, and the whole chase came to a screeching halt. Eventually, after some hot words, it was decided they should part ways. Old Robin went off to help the city of Lyme Regis, which was currently besieged by Prince Rupert's younger brother, Maurice. And Waller went on after the king. Charles made another fake attack in a northern direction and with the precious time gained by the Roundhead general's argument, he then circled right back into Oxford and gathered more of his men that he had left behind. Waller eventually caught up with him again. Within a mile now, actually. He could see the king's troops riding right along the river Cherwell, on the opposite side. The Royalist and Roundhead soldiers eyed each other suspiciously across that rushing river, but no one wanted to cross and start the fight. They kept marching on, side by side along the Cherwell, close enough to see each other, but never a shot fired, until they came to Cropredy Bridge. Not this bridge, though. This bridge was actually built in the 1930s. The old one back then would have looked something like this. Waller ordered part of his troops to charge across the Cropredy Bridge. If they were quick enough, he thought, perhaps they could get out in front of the king and stop him in his tracks. It didn't work. Charles put spurs to his horse and sped forward, gaining the following crossing, Hayes Bridge, just in time. With a mighty heave, some of the king's musketeers managed to flip a wagon over and block the Roundheads from crossing after them. But only a third of the little Royalist army had made it across Hayes Bridge. The other two divisions, led by the Earl of Cleveland and the Earl of Northampton, had stayed behind in a valiant attempt to buy their king time to escape. They were pressed very sorely, for now the Roundheads were swarming over from a ford down the river, as well as Cropredy Bridge. And just to make it easier for you to understand what's going on, here's Cleveland's division in front of Cropredy Bridge. This is Northampton's division down by the ford, and the king is up here by Hayes Bridge. When Charles heard what was going on, he immediately sent a division, including his own lifeguards, away to go help the two earls. And you see how Charles could be very noble when he wanted to be. These men came charging back to the rescue, and soon they had helped their friends drive all the Roundhead troops back to their side of the river. The day had taken quite a turn. At first it seemed as if the king would be captured. Now he stood the victor. With his usual annoying politeness, Charles sent a letter to Waller offering pardon from treason. Waller flatly declined it, saying he had no authority to even speak of such a thing. And so, the king slipped away into the mists of the west, while the Roundhead general looked helplessly on. We can only wonder what Waller was thinking. For years he had fought in Europe for his king, received his knighthood from his king, and now... Poor Waller was only one of the many Roundhead commanders that had entered this fight with a divided heart. Later, he would be accused and exiled by the very parliament he had helped set up.